And we are here at Congregation Ner Tamid at our Bible class. I'm Rabbi Tzvi Graetz, and today we are going to be studying chapter 10. I want to really remind everyone that last week we read the horrific story of Avimelech and how he killed 70 of his brothers. The only one left was Jotham, who told everyone, who made Avimelech king, you're all going to suffer the consequences. And we read in chapter 10 how Avimelech actually murdered many of his hometown people of Shechem and tried to kill more until a woman killed him, if you remember, with a millstone that cracked his head. And he luckily died, and a little bit of sanity was restored to the Israelites. Let me share the PowerPoint. Today we start with chapter 10. Okay, chapter 10 is after Avimelech dies. Verse 1. After Avimelech, Tola, son of Puah, son of Dodo, of Issachar, arose to deliver Israel. He lived at Shamir in the hill country of Ephraim. He led Israel for 23 years, and he died and was buried at Shamir. Okay, so if you remember what happens, there's always like a cycle, right? The Israelites sin, they get an external enemy that comes and gets back to them because that's God's punishment to them because they sin to God. And then they yell out to God, please come and save us. And God sends them a savior. This is the only time it doesn't happen. That's because Avimelech is like his own judge of his own people. And it's kind of like you're already punished by the fact that you have a civil war within you. So there's 23 of quiet time with this judge who's called Tola. But who is he? What is this guy? We have no information about him. We don't know what he likes, what he does. We only know his name is Tola. No, that's for my evening class. If you could say those. Then the only thing we know that is where he lived at Shamir and where he's buried, which is the same place at Shamir in the hill country of Ephraim, and that he ruled over Israel for 23 years. Okay, what is this name Tola? Tola, by the way, in Hebrew is a worm. Okay, a worm. Yeah. And Puah is also not clear. So it's like Tola, a worm, a son of Puah, who was a son of Dodo, from the tribe of Issachar. By the way, if you remember, we said that every tribe had their own judge at a certain point in the book of Judges, which is also interesting to see the geographical spread of the judges. So we have very little about this judge, but let's see what do we have a little bit about this Tola, son of Puah. We have in the book of Genesis, and the sons of Issachar, Tola, and Puah. So here we have evidence that name exists also in other books of the Bible, in Genesis, so there's a little bit information. And then we have the Tolaat Shani, which is the crimson worm. Again, Tola is worm. So the crimson worm produced a dye that was a deep red color. This dye was highly valued in the ancient world and is mentioned in the Bible as one of the colors used in the tabernacle, Mishkan, fabrics and priestly garments. Okay, so maybe his name indicates that they are part of a family that had this special fabric, that maybe had access to the special worm, okay, the crimson worm, which produced color, the beautiful red color that served in the Mishkan. And lo and behold, at the Qumran site in the Dead Sea, in not far from Jerusalem, when you go down and you have the ancient scrolls of that ancient sect of the Israelites that lived in the desert because they ran away from Jerusalem, they were persecuted, and they had their whole religious life out there. They built synagogues and they worshiped God there, etc. And in that site, human bones with a reddish hue were found. Examination showed that the color originated from the fact that the individuals had for a period of time consumed a potion made with madder roots. The assumption is that these people suffered from kidney stones, and the traditional medical treatment for this condition involved the use of madder. Okay, so this is the reddish part that was maybe used with that root, maybe breeded together with the crimson worm, and produced that beautiful color that was in the tabernacle. Very interesting assumption, right? And some interesting biblical evidence, because that's really all we know about this Tola, son of Puah. I don't know if my mother has any more information about this specific judge. Very, very anonymous. Although very important because he brought peace and serenity for Israel for 23 years. So we would have hoped there would be more stuff about him, but that's it. Now, if we go back to looking in our map here, okay, so Issachar is here. This is small tribe, okay, and they are here. And Ephraim, which is where he's buried, is here. So it's not really clear how come he's like with a different name in a different area. So it's not very clear, but we do see the that evidence here. Okay, what's the next in our chapter 10? After him arose Yair, the Gileadite, and he led Israel for 22 years. He had 30 sons who rode on 30 burros and owned 30 burros in the region of Gilead. These are called Chavot Yair to this day. Then Yair died and was buried at Kamun. So this is very interesting. So we don't have any information about this guy. That's the only information we have about him, with some interesting facts. He was the judge for 22 years. Okay. He had 30 sons and rode 30 burros, like donkeys, I guess, and owned 30 burros. So he had a very big estate, very large estate, and they are called Chavot Yair in his name, okay? But please note, it doesn't say who is his father, just Yair. Very interesting, right? We have no information about this guy except for his name, and that he had children, and that he was so important that the entire area was named after him. So do we have any more information about him? He was buried in Kamun. Where is that? Probably in Gilead. So first of all, let's go back to our PowerPoint and remember Gilead is the part of it's a family from the tribe of Menashe, and it's on the east side of the Jordan River. That's today Jordan, maybe even parts of Syria. if you see this geographically, okay, here. And Gilead is here right in the middle. It's a huge area. Look how big the tribe of Menashe here, this whole part here. And we do have evidence here in the Bible. I didn't translate this, but it's just different verses in the book of Numbers that it talks about Chavot Yair, and the same also in Deuteronomy. So, which is interesting, these area existed before this guy in the book of Judges. So how could that be? This gives us kind of an indication that when was each of these books written? Is the book of Judges precedes the Torah? That doesn't make sense, right? But we realize that there's some kind of like an editor that might have entered information that was well known to everyone, right? It's like, let's say I'm going to write a story about, California in in the year 1800, but I want people to know that there was Los Angeles, so I will say in Los Angeles. But in the 1800, there was no Los Angeles yet, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Okay, let's say 1500, okay? So probably no Los Angeles then. But I'm going to write it down so everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'll put it into the story, even though it's not exactly accurate, because people won't know what I'm talking about if I won't write the exact location. So everyone knows that this place, Chavot Yair, that area of Chavot Yair exists. So someone somehow inserted it into a previous material, which is fascinating phenomena. Shows us a little bit how the Bible was redacted. And it's always connected with the tribe of Menashe, with that specific area. And it's very clear that this person is very important. And in other parts of the Bible, it actually says the name of his father and who he was. So we do have some information. And here is a better map of the exact area in the east side of the Jordan. Okay, so that's the story about this guy. Next. So what happens now after he dies? Verse 6. The Israelites again did what was offensive to God. They served the Baalim and the Ashtaroth and the gods of Aram, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the Ammonites, and the gods of the Philistines. First time we see Philistine in the Bible, okay? They forsook and did not serve God. Okay, so the cycle of the book of Judges returns. They always go and they worship a different God. However, this is one of the lowest points in Jewish history because they don't serve one foreign God. They don't serve two foreign gods. They serve all the gods around them, just forgetting to serve one important God, which is the God of Israel, which is their God. And the Bible takes the time here to mention each of these gods, the gods of Sidon, Moab, the Ammonites, the Philistines, every possible God. But they forsook and did not serve God. And verse 7 is, and God, incensed with Israel, surrendered them to the Philistines and to the Ammonites. So here we see an interesting thing. Until now, they were surrendered to enemies on the eastern front. We'll go back to our map again. Okay, so that would be here, the Ammonites and the Midianites and the Aramites, all those are on the east sides. And here suddenly, you see this white area here? This is part of the promised land. It's part of the Israelite borders, but there's no tribe of Israel here. That's because this is where the cities of Gaza, you might have heard of that one, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Gat. These are all the major four cities of the Philistines that came from the sea. We're going to read more about them and understand more. But this is the first time that there's an enemy on the west side, okay, which are the Philistines. So they have two enemies surrounding them from the east, the Ammonites, and the suddenly new enemies, which are the Philistines. Verse 8, that year they battered and shattered the Israelites for 18 years. It's a long time that they submit to these other nations. All the Israelites beyond the Jordan in what had been the land of the Amorites in Gilead. The Ammonites also crossed the Jordan to make war on Judah, Benjamin, and the house of Ephraim. Israel was in great distress. So the Ammonites are here in this area, okay, and they're invading Judah, Ephraim, all of these areas. Then the Israelites cried out to God. Yeah, they're in trouble. They're in distress. They're under attack. They thought by worshiping the other gods, maybe they'll get a better life. Maybe they'll have good friends. Maybe they'll kind of like make a pact with the other nations and they'll be safe and sound. Lo and behold, the other nations were not trustworthy and you cannot trade a pact with them according to the conception of the Bible here. And they cried out to God, we stand guilty before you, for we have forsaken our God and served the Baalim. Okay, so it takes them 18 years also to realize. They're like, well, maybe we could work out a deal with them. Maybe we could do something. It's like, and then after 18 years, Chai, right? They all remember, oh, yeah, there used to be this God of Israel. He was really good to us. He gave us this land. And when we worshiped him, things were better. He always saved us, Savior. As a last resort, let's try and yell out to God to help us. But God said to the Israelites, I have rescued you from the Egyptians, from the Amorites, from the Ammonites, and from the Philistines. The Sidonians, Amalek, and Maon also oppressed you. And when you cried out to me, I saved you from them. Yet you have forsaken me and have served other gods. No, I will not deliver you again. Go cry to the gods you have chosen. Let them deliver you in your time of distress. Wow, this is breaking news. God is like, enough is enough. I've done this cycle with you too many times. You always come back to me saying, please save us from the other nations that are oppressing. You go and you betray me. You don't worship the God of Israel. I've had it. You know what? Why don't you go back to those gods? Worship them and try to have them deliver you. This is breaking news because we've never had God that's like, it's like, you're God. You're supposed to save the people of Israel always, right? No, so this is not a permanent pact. It's not a permanent covenant according to God. There could be an end to this. I've had it, like till here, he says, which is very distressing, very, terrible news for the Israelites. But the Israelites implored God, we stand guilty, do to us as you see fit. Only save us this day. So they're willing to take any punishment, but just, we want to go back to you. We can't this anymore. They removed the alien gods, okay, which one would expect them to do, right? It's just like you're asking God, please come help us, but you have like just on the side, just in case you have the alien gods at home, right, as a resort. from among them and served God. And God could not bear the miseries of Israel. God is, he's often in the Bible described like, like a mother who takes care of her children, or a father or a husband whose wife betrayed him, but he feels compassion for her when she wants to go back to him. So God is often described in the Bible like that, and here his compassion overrides his, his anger and his punishments to the Israelites. And what happens next on verse 17 is the Ammonites mustered and they encamped in Gilead, and the Israelites massed and they encamped at Mitzpah. The troops, the officers of Gilead, said to one another, "Let whoever is the first to fight the Ammonites to be chieftain over all the inhabitants of Gilead." Okay, so God is going to save them. We know now, okay, God's going to be back in the plan somehow, but a war is going to happen. So we need God to act really quickly because they all assemble in Gilead. A lot of Israelites have encamped there, but the troops, the army of the Ammonites is great and huge, a very, very strong army. And they are about to wipe out the Israelites. So kind of like ending this chapter in a tense moment, trying to realize what's next. What's next is we sidetrack now to a story about Jephthah, Yiftach. Anyone ever heard about his name?
Was she the one in the wall? Was that the prostitute in the wall?
No, no, that's a different story.
Oh.
Okay. So Jephthah, the Gileadite, was an able warrior who was the son of a certain prostitute. Jephthah's father was Gilead. Okay. So his father was a prominent person. Okay. But apparently he liked many women and he didn't always marry them. So he went to a prostitute. And that prostitute bore a son for him named Yiftach. Okay. Now his name Yiftach is Yud Pei Taf Chet. Yud could stand for God's name, like Adonai, God's name, sometimes written with a Yud, and Patach, God has opened. Okay, so maybe like God's opening some kind of a channel through him. Okay, but also Patach is like a wide opening. Okay, and sometimes in a very derogatory way, prostitutes are referred to opening up, their legs in a sense. So okay, so is this kind of like a double connotation of the name here? So although he is the son of a prostitute, something more mystical, something more unclear is going to happen, because usually you disregard a person like that. He's not a member of the society. He's like on the outskirts. No one recognizes him. He's a son of a harlot. Everyone makes fun of him. You're a son of a harlot. Like, who are you? But he was a warrior. But Gilead also had sons by his wife. And when the wife's sons grew up, they drove Yiftach out. They said to him, "You shall have no share in our father's property, for you are the son of an outsider." So they tell him, like, go away. You're not going to inherit anything here. Like, you're a son of an outsider, of a harlot. So Yiftach fled from his brothers and settled in the Tov country. Tov means good, the country of good. And men of low character gathered about Yiftach and went out waiting with him. So he becomes a very strong guy, but he's kind of like surrounded by a lot of low character people. They're like, going and stealing stuff and probably robbing people in the roads to make a living. But he is accumulating power, and he is very well known in the area and probably intimidates everyone with his band of people. Sometime later, the Ammonites went to war against Israel. And when the Ammonites attacked Israel, the elders of Gilead went to bring Yiftach back from the Tov country. Okay, so now the unthinkable happens. They sent him off. Now they need him back. Oh, we're so sorry we mocked you and sent you off, and and threw you away from your inheritance and threw you away from your homeland, but we really need you back. They said to Yiftach, come be our chief, so that we can fight the Ammonites. Yiftach replied to the elders of Gilead, you are the very people who rejected me and drove me out of my father's house. How can you come to me now when you are in trouble? Okay, you ruined my life. Okay, I had a terrible life. You threw me here. I've settled back. I'm fine with my hoodlums. Okay, leave me alone. It's your problem. It's your war. I don't care about it. Which shows you that Yiftach is like, it's like, I don't care about you guys anymore. He's so angry with them. The elders of Gilead said to Yiftach, honestly, we have now turned back to you. If you come with us and fight the Ammonites, you shall be our commander over all the inhabitants of Gilead. Okay, you'll be upgraded. We'll give you, your status back. Yiftach said to the elders of Gilead, very well, if you bring me back to fight the Ammonites, and God delivers them to me, I am to be your commander. And the elders of Gilead answered Yiftach, God shall be witness between us. We will do just as you have said. Yiftach went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him their commander and chief. And Yiftach repeated all these terms before God at Mitzpah. Yiftach, so they're having like a pact. They're all signing an agreement because he knows these people can't be trusted. They threw him out. They took him from his inheritance. So he's like, okay, we're going to sign the deal. Everyone's going to be witness to this. Yiftach then sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites, saying, what have you against me that you have come to make war on my country? The king of the Ammonites replied to Yiftach's messenger, when Israel came from Egypt, they seized the land that is mine, from the Arnon to the Yabok, as far as the Jordan. Now then restored it peaceably. Yiftach again sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites. He said to him, thus said Yiftach, Israel did not seize the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. When they left Egypt, Israel traveled through the wilderness to the Sea of Reeds and went to Kadesh. Israel then sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, allow us to cross your country. But the king of Edom would not consent. They also sent a mission to the king of Moab, and he refused. So Israel, after staying at Kadesh, traveled on through the wilderness, skirting the land of Edom and the land of Moab. They kept to the east of the land of Moab until they camped on the other side of the Arnon. And since Moab ends at the Arnon, they never entered Moabite territory. Okay, just so we understand on the map, right? They went out of Egypt here. Okay, down here we don't see Egypt. They went all the way here to the east. You see the cursor, okay? And they went all the way here and encamped here. Okay, this is kind of like what they've done over 40 years in the desert. Then Israel sent messengers to Sichon, king of the Amorites, king of Heshbon. Israel said to him, which is ancestor, hundreds of years before, allow us to cross through your country to our homeland. But Sichon would not trust Israel to pass through this territory. Sichon mustered all his troops, and they encamped at Yachatz. He engaged Israel in battle. Okay, so your forefather, the same king, but many years ago, had the same option. He could have let the Israelites come in. He said, no, you can't come in, but he waged war against them. So what do you want Israel to do when you engage war?
Fight back.
Yeah, but the eternal, the God of Israel, delivered Sichon and all his troops into Israel's hands. And they defeated them, and Israel took possession of all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of the land. You fight against someone, you lose, you snooze. Okay? It's their land now. You have no claim on the land anymore. Don't go to war. Thus, they possessed all the territory of the Amorites from the Arnon to the Abok, and from the wilderness to the Jordan. Now then, the Eternal, the God of Israel, dispossessed the Amorites before this covenanted people Israel. And should you possess their land, do you not hold what Chemosh, your God, gives you to possess? So we will hold on to everything that the Eternal, our God, has given us to possess. Okay? Sometimes you go to war and you possess a certain land and it's yours. It's the same claim we have. That's how it works. Besides, are you any better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he start a quarrel with Israel or go to war with them? While Israel has been inhabiting Heshbon and its dependencies, and Aroer and its dependencies, and all the towns along the Arnon for 300 years, why have you not tried to recover them all this time? I have done you no wrong. You are doing me harm and making war on me. May God, who judges, decided today between the Israelites and the Ammonites. So very interesting that Yiftach is also a very good speaker. Okay, he's not just a hoodlum. He's not just a person who leads a gang. He's a smart guy. Okay, he probably got a good education from his mother that raised him, even though she was a prostitute, and his father was a very established person in the community. Okay, and he built himself in two hands. He's a very powerful person. And now he knows how to negotiate. He knows how to talk with other leaders. He sent this whole speech with the history of the people of Israel. And he kind of like ejects himself into the middle of the story. Until now, he was kind of like on the side. Whatever happens to Israel. That's none of my concern. Suddenly, when he assumes leadership, when they tell him, okay, now you're our chief, now you're a captain, he says, okay, I'm going to fight for you. But it starts with this back and forth negotiation, which shows you he knows how to lead, the people. And he comes back with all these historic arguments from the Bible, from the Torah, which also shows you he learned the Torah. He knows the laws. He knows what's going on. And the most important thing is that he trusts God, even though they threw him away and pushed him away, rejected him from the community. He has his inner belief in God and his inner strength within him to trust God, even though it's kind of like the same God that the people used to reject him because he's the son of a prostitute. He held on to his belief. He held on to his trust in God. So we continue on verse 28. But the king of the Ammonites paid no heed to the message that Yiftach sent him. So we're going to war. Then the Spirit of God came upon Yiftach. So until now, God's Spirit was not on Yiftach, but after the speech, God also hears Yiftach. He likes it. He's like, wow, this guy, this kid or whatever, this dude is like a real leader. And he bestows his spirit on him. He marched through Gilead and Manasseh, passing Mitzpeh of Gilead, and from Mitzpeh of Gilead, he crossed over to the Ammonites, and Yiftach made the following vow to God. Now listen up. This is a very, very powerful, sad statement that we're going to talk about today and next week. He says, if you deliver the Ammonites into my hands, he tells God, then whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me on my safe return from the Ammonites shall be God's, and shall be offered by me as a burnt offering. What is he saying? Okay. God, if you deliver the Ammonites to me, he's making a vow. Okay, I vow to you that when I return back as a warrior, as a conqueror, the first thing that comes out of my house will be offered to you, God, as a burnt offering.
I pray
Just bring me
it'd
back.
be a chicken.
Yeah, let's hope it's a chicken. Let's hope it's a goat. Let's hope it's not a human being. Remember the story? Okay. Yiftach.
What was he thinking? Like it would be a wife or a servant or?
No, I think he was thinking, hopefully, he's kind of like making, he said, like, God, I'll make a vow, anything that happens, I'll do. I just want to win this war. I think he's deep down in himself, he is not secure. He's like, okay, I've got a big task here today. Okay, and I need God's help. I'm not sure I could really win over the Ammonites, and I'm so afraid that I'm willing to go as far as saying, I'll give the most precious thing to me, whatever it is that comes out of the house, just let me win and bring victory to the people of Israel. What was he thinking? He was probably not thinking.
No, okay.
Okay, but if we try to analyze his inner thinking, this is probably what he's thinking. If you have other ideas, yeah.
Is this the first time that there's been such an offer to God?
Yeah,
I don't remember hearing any others.
yes, this is the first time there's such an offering, and when we talk about it also next week, we will talk about the obligation to fulfill a vow. When you make a vow in the Bible, you have to make it. You have to fulfill it, or else you have sinned to God, and you could be punished by the death penalty, by kind of like from heaven. Words matter back then. It's not like today when you say, oh yeah, I'll be there, maybe yes, I'll see, yeah, oh, I promise you I'll do this, I promise you I'll do that. You couldn't say that in the ancient times. If you said that word, I promise, with a vow, saying, I vow, you could not lie. If you were on the stand taking the oath, you would not lie. Okay. Hopefully today people don't do that as well, but I've heard of some instances where people don't keep their word, right? Today is a different reality than the time of the Bible.
Are you saying that some people lie to you?
No, not to me, but I've heard it. Yeah. Interesting, very interesting question, right? So Yiftach crossed over to the Ammonites and attacked them, and God delivered them into his hands. Okay, so not a very long description of the war, but he was successful. That's all we need to do. And he saved the people of Israel. He utterly routed them from Aroer as far as Minit, 20 towns, all the way to Abel Cheramim. So the Ammonites submitted to the Israelites. Okay, so he fights the war here at Gilead, and he's very successful in this area here. When Yiftach, verse 34, when Yiftach arrived at his home in Mitzpah, there was his daughter coming out to meet him with hand drum and dance. She was an only child. He had no other son or daughter. On seeing her, he rent his clothes and said, Alas, daughter, you have brought me low. You have become my troubler. For I have uttered a vow to God, and I cannot retract. So now we see how tragic this story is gonna be. She is the one that came out of the house. And she is the one that he said he's gonna bring to the altar, right? Father, she said, you have uttered a vow to God. Do to me as you have vowed, seeing that God has vindicated you against your enemies, the Ammonites. She further said to her father, let this be done for me. Let me be for 2 months, and I will go with my companions and lament upon the hills, and there bewail my maidenhood. Okay? So at least give me 2 months to go. She's never married anyone. She doesn't have children. At least go and let me be with my friends, my girlfriends, and kind of like parting from life. Go, he replied. He let her go for 2 months, and she and her companions went and bewailed her maidenhood upon the hills. After 2 months' time, she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed. She had never known a man, so it became a custom in Israel for the maidens of Israel to go every year for 4 days in the year and chant dirges for the daughter of Yiftach, the Gileadite. Okay, so it's kind of like very, very sad story, ends in a tragic and terrible way, which we're kind of used to in the book of Judges, right? But this is kind of another low of someone having to sacrifice his daughter for something pretty foolish that he didn't think about. It shows us again the state of the people of Israel, the moral decay, but a vow is a vow, and the daughter understands that as well. However, there is also a way to disqualify a vow. A vow does not have to be fulfilled in certain cases, and in the Jewish tradition, in the Talmud, it tells us different ways of annulling the vow. You could go to a court, a rabbinic court, and annul the vow. There are different ways of doing that. Please note they're not doing this here. Okay, they're keeping the vow. They're kind of like too vain to go to the court of rabbis and to annul the vow, which is terrible. They could have saved the daughter, but they don't do that. But this is later on. In biblical terms, the vow is a vow. In rabbinic terms, that vow could have been disvowed, could have been annulled. So it's like a different interpretation, which we will see momentarily.
So what would have happened to her? I mean, if he sacrificed her to God, what did that mean?
That she was put on the altar, like she was,
And
like Isaac was supposed to be sacrificed. That would have happened, so this happened to her. However, there is a question, did she die or not? And there are a few answers to that. Rabbi Levi ben Gershom, who's a commentator from the 13th century in Europe, 13th or 12th century, he writes, and behold, that which comes out from the doors of his house must necessarily be a living being. And if it were of the human species, it would be for the Lord. That is, it would be dedicated exclusively to the service of God. Therefore, Yiftach tore his garments when he saw his daughter coming out to greet him, for this vow obligated that she should not be married to a man. So he's like, wait. She was not sacrificed, but she was sacrificed to God to work in the temple and never to be married, like a nun. Okay? That's what happened. No one killed her. It's like, are you crazy? You don't have human sacrifices in Judaism, according to his interpretation. So he cannot conceive that you would actually kill her, sacrifice her in that way. He's like, no, she was sacrificed to worship God in a way that she cannot never get married. She would work in the temple for the rest of her life, like a nun. It appears that Yiftach made for her a house apart where she saw no man and no woman, and she dwelled there. However, he allowed her 2 months during which she went with her companions to mourn her virginity in the mountains. After that time, he secluded her in the house, and she did not see even a woman there, except 4 days each year, which became a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel would go to lament the daughter of Yiftach for her virginity, and she remained separated from any man all her days. So this reflects Ralbag's interpretation that Yiftach did not sacrifice his daughter, but rather dedicated her to a life of complete seclusion and perpetual virginity in service of God. So in a way, he lives in Europe, I think in France, and in around the 12th, 13th century, I think he sees around him the nuns, especially the ones that were sometimes locked in places and were kind of like never were allowed to be with men or something like that. So maybe he has that conception and that influences his interpretation of the Bible. Very interesting to see how, living in different historical periods affect your interpretation of the Bible. So did she die? Not according to Rabbi. Did she die number 2? Okay. Doc, Rabbi David Kimchi from the 14th century, right? And he carried out his vow, which he had vowed. That is, he made for her a house and placed her there. And she remained there, separated from people and from the ways of the world. And it became a custom in Israel that from year to year, the daughters of Israel would go to her to lament her. That is, to mourn and weep with her over her virginity. So, right, like Ralbag, Radak understands that Yiftach did not offer his daughter as a literal sacrifice, but instead dedicated her to a life of isolation and perpetual celibacy. Okay, so here's another commentator who's saying she did not die. Other commentators say no, it happened, but it's interesting to see that that option was there as well. Let's look at some fascinating artwork on the daughter. Okay, here you see Edwin Long. I don't remember I think maybe from the 17th century, where you see the daughter hanging out to his father. He comes back from war. He's in the dark. She's bright, beautiful skin. She's lit in many ways, okay, symbolizing her virginity. She is comforting her father, who's looking the other way. He can't look her in the eyes after what he did to her. What a tragic scene here. A beautiful painting. Another series of paintings by Yiftach's daughter from 1879, painted by Alexander Cabanel. This 19th century painting reflects the tragic and emotional interpretation of the story of Yiftach's daughter from the book of Judges, often emphasizing her sorrow and fate. Okay, she kind of like accepting her fate, holding her hands this way, accepting her fate. And you see her girlfriends here in the back. She's gone to the mountains to wail for her virginity and loss of her life. And her friends are with her here as well. Here's another series from these paintings. You see these 2 birds here. These birds may be symbolizing hope, maybe symbolizing the life she could have had. All her friends, one of them is facing her, one is kind of like leaning, crying on her. Most of them can't even look at her, and she's also looking up to the sky. The sky is gloom, her future is gloom. Very powerful and sad painting as well. Edwin Long from 1885. This work by Edwin Langston Long, reflects a more dramatic, tragic interpretation of the story in the Book of Judges. Unlike commentators such as Rabbi and Radak, who saw the daughter as dedicated to a life of seclusion, this 19th century painting leans into the interpretation that she was offered as a literal sacrifice, emphasizing martyrdom and emotional intensity typical of Victorian biblical art. Okay, so every period of time, they said, has a different interpretation. So in Victorian art, the inclination was more to describe the emotional side of the Bible, more dramatic. Here we see that interpretation prevails with all these beautiful flowers around her. I doubt if that's the original story. I don't think no one put flowers around her, but it adds to the drama. And we see Yiftach is like, oh my God, what have I done? Kind of like, cannot believe how miserable he is. Here's another from that painting, and we see who's comforting who. Here's Yiftach, a decorated warrior, comes back from war, but alas, no victory is sweet to him because he's going to be losing his daughter, and his daughter is comforting him. Okay, kind of like, alas, my father, don't worry. Okay, in that way. Let's go into William Blake. Have you heard of the artist William Blake from I think the 20th century, correct?
Yes.
This powerful work by William Blake offers a deeply symbolic and emotional interpretation of the story for the Book of Judges. Blake's style is less about historical realism and more about spiritual drama. The figures often appear almost otherworldly, emphasizing inner turmoil and divine tension. Like many artists, Blake leans toward the interpretation that Yiftach's daughter was literally sacrificed, highlighting themes of tragic faith, human vow, and the cost of devotion, in contrast to medieval and rabbinic commentators like Radak and Rabbi, who reinterprets the story as one of seclusion and lifelong dedication. Blake's work reflects a Christian-influenced artistic tradition that reads the story as a true martyrdom. Okay, so here she is as a virgin, sacrificed to God in this kind of like weird ritual described here. Here's a 1713 painting of Yiftach returning from battle and greeted by his daughter. And he's not looking at her because she doesn't know her fate. He knows his vow, and he knows what's going to happen. He's not able to face her. And do you remember last week I brought you a photo by Diklala Or, an Israeli artist who had the woman that killed Avimelech with the stone. So here she has another one of a beautiful Israeli woman here in the field of Mitzpah. Okay, I think she went there and took a photo of this woman dressed, and this is her interpretation of the daughter of Yiftach mourning her virginity. I also found this very interesting poem of Yiftach's daughter by Shlomit Cohen Asif. It's in Hebrew, but ChatGPT helped me translate it. In the story of Yiftach's daughter, there was no ram, and Father Yiftach was a captain, a mighty warrior. Perhaps she had a name like a flower, perhaps a name like a precious stone. The Bible did not give her a name. To Yiftach's beautiful daughter, Father Yiftach galloped on horseback in the mountains. He swore an oath and made his vows. Father Yiftach galloped on horseback in the mountains, with a crown of victory and the songs of the drunk. In the story of Yiftach's daughter, there was no ram, only a knife turning over in the thicket of night. If you remember the story of Isaac, right? In this binding, earth and heaven were silent. In this binding, no wings rustled. In this story, no angel cried, Yiftach, Yiftach, do not raise your hand. Do not send it against the girl, right? Like an angel called to Abraham, do not send your hand against your son. The next morning rose, and the sun shone, and Yiftach judged, and Yiftach ruled. A very powerful poem. And here is another very powerful midrash. Oh, I'm sorry, no, that's for next week. Now Yiftach the Gileadite was a mighty warrior, and he was the son of a prostitute. After the first shock, he should have run to search for her in the mountains, to embrace her and say, my daughter, not a hair of your head shall fall. The vow will be annulled. But you, cursed are you, Yiftach, murderer, son of a prostitute. Your mother, there's no fault in her. Only you are her disgrace. Meichana Kav Roth. Very powerful poem, which ends